back. Well, a very slight reprieve for drivers from tomorrow, if you use petrol, that is. Both grades of petrol will decrease by 12 cents a litre, but diesel is going up by between 92 and 98 cents a litre. So what's behind the price adjustments and how are things looking for the next couple of months? Let's unpack this with Leighton Beard from the Automobile Association of South Africa. I was pretty stumped about how this works, Leighton, so maybe you can help me out. Why is it that diesel users are seeing a significant price increase, but petrol users are actually getting that 12 cents per litre relief?
Well, there's a difference in the refining process, Shahan, and the distillates that are used to actually refine both petrol and diesel are different, and there's a price difference between the two. And that's the reason why we're seeing the disparity in the pricing between diesel and petrol.
So R1.50 relief, we all were pretty excited about that, right? When government announced it, it was taking off R1.50 from the general fuel levy at the end of this month. That is actually coming to an end in June. Does that mean another petrol price hike for South Africans?
Look, I think when you add that R1.50 to the basic petrol price, it obviously is going to push the price of that fuel up. So it all depends what the rand does against the US dollar and what the international petroleum prices look like throughout May and what those averages give us. But certainly, I think if you were to add a R1.50 to the price that we got today, it would be obviously significantly higher, going into the new month. Our call now is to get some sort of clarity from government on what the plan is at the end of May going into June in terms of dealing with the fuel price. This relief was brought in because government acknowledged, and we are grateful that they acknowledged that there was a problem with the fuel price and that it wasn't only hitting motorists, it was hitting all consumers, and that was obviously a concern for everybody. And the relief was intended to do exactly that, provide relief in the short term. But at the same time, government did announce that it was looking at longer-term measures to deal more effectively with the fuel price. And I think what we are waiting for in May is exactly how that's going to play out and what those relief measures are.
Yeah, and, many would argue that while we wait for those relief measures, and if there is nothing to come, that there should be an extension to this R1.50 because it does go a long way.
Yes, but remember, when you rob Peter to pay Paul, you still have to pay Paul at the end of the day. And I think the big problem that government has is how does it cover that shortfall? I mean, the shortfall that we're going to have in April and May is around about 6 million rand a month and 6 billion rand a month, and government is getting that through its strategic fuel stocks. Is that going to be enough to carry it throughout a longer period? And I think government has acknowledged that it isn't. And that this is not a long-term solution and it's not sustainable. So what they will be looking at, as they said earlier, are other measures. And I think what we need to get from them is exactly what they've decided on. The proposals that they put on the table that the Minister of Finance announced in late February are now things that we need to see in terms of a concrete plan on the table. And I think that's exactly what we're waiting to see in May. Hopefully that comes before the end of the month going into June, because I think there'll be a lot of people similar to you and I, Shahan, who are quite worried about what the fuel price is going to do going into June.
Yeah, and let's talk long-term in terms of the price, because the rand plummeted last week. Going forward, that means it's possibly another setback for the next couple of months, not just for June.
Yeah, I mean, it's still very early, Shahan, and, we hate to speculate about what's going to happen in the next 3 or 4 months. I think where we are at the moment is that obviously the rand has been seesawing over the last couple of days. We saw it breach 16 Rand 10 a couple of days ago. This evening it's down again at 15 Rand 80, which is really good news. International petroleum prices remain quite high, and that's off the back of the Ukraine-Russia conflict, so that's quite concerning. And how these averages, because that's how this is determined. You don't just take a price on day one and say that's how we're going to determine the price. You've got to look at the rand-dollar exchange rate every day over a period. Same with these international petroleum prices and oil prices, and then get an average to determine whether there's been what they call an under or over recovery. So, it's still early days in May. We need to give it some time to filter out, and hopefully by the middle of the month we'll have a clearer picture. But certainly I think South Africans are very worried about the fuel cost situation. And as we've said many, many times before, it's not only motorists that are affected by this. Every single consumer is affected in some way because of rising fuel costs, because it's an input cost in all these different sectors. So yes, I mean, I think people are very worried. People are quite concerned, and people are already stretched to the max financially. So this is something that government, I think, knows and acknowledges. But now it's time for action, and we need to see what that action is.
Yeah, and of course, as you mentioned, the implications are widespread, because Sally and I were talking about the cost of food going up dramatically, and this is one of the contributing factors. Let's talk about the driver's license issue, because we know that motorists have, 2 more days before that deadline actually expires for them to have applied for their driver's license renewals.
Exactly. And I mean, it's not a lot of time. And the minister announced last week that there's still 1.3 million people who have not applied or have not started the process of renewals. And we would venture a guess that the reason they haven't done that is not, as the minister suggests, because of inertia. Although I think there is obviously a small element of that, but also because some of the centres that they are using are not properly equipped to handle their applications to get these documents done. We know that there are 2 flagship driving license testing centres in Gauteng, one in Midrand and one in Centurion. And by all accounts, these are absolutely brilliant. They're excellent people, have got rave reviews about their experiences there. People say they go in, they go out. It's a very quick process, very efficient. People are extremely friendly, and the systems work all the time. They're never offline. And we think that's a model, and we think that's brilliant. And because of that, we think government now knows, and the public now knows, that government has the capacity to do this. Unfortunately, it's not replicated in every DLTC throughout the country, where unfortunately everything I've just described is exactly the opposite for many other people. So we would like to see those systems replicated in every DLTC throughout the country. And until that is done, we don't think this deadline is reasonable or fair. Government has a responsibility, and the public has a right to demand this level of service wherever they go. And until that's the case everywhere, and it's ubiquitous in all government, departments and outlets and interactions with the public, it's unfair to put a deadline where people simply can't get these things done. So we would certainly like to see that deadline extended, Shahan.
Yeah, and just lastly, government also announced that the operating hours at these centres will be adjusted, and then weekends they'd stay open. Do you know whether that's had any impact on dealing with that large amount in terms of the backlog?
I think it's had a nominal impact, Shahan, on that. Certainly at the 2 centres I've mentioned, I know that from experience, not personal experience, but what people are telling us, that certainly is very beneficial, and that they make use of those extended hours. And I have a feeling that people are doing that throughout the country. But we must remember, people want to use these things at specific times during the week when it suits them. And if that means, 8 o'clock in the morning or 10 o'clock in the morning, then that's when that DLTC has to function at its optimal level. So, yes, I think it has had an impact. But again, it's not only about those extended operating hours, Sean. It's about, are the systems online? Are the online booking systems working? Are the people there all equipped to do the things they need to do? Are there sufficient people to do the job that's needed to be done? These are the other things that people must remember. Booking times and operating hours is one thing, but it has to come together with a whole range of other things as well.
All right. Thanks so much for your input. Appreciate it. Leighton Beard from the Automobile Association of South Africa.